Hey guys, this is Tanner Smith with EDL 850 Module 12, Tort Liability. So what is tort liability? Tort liability is when a civil wrong is done to someone by another party. The liability of the person committing the tortious act can be intentional or negligent. So in school, that could be administration, teachers, another student, any staff member by the district towards another student or another person in the school as a stakeholder. Intentional tort includes these four things. It can be assault, which is an attempt to physically injure a person, or it can be a situation where you're creating a feeling of fear or potential harm. Battery is actual physicality, where you're actually harming someone physically. False imprisonment, that discusses, confining students against their will. It could be instances where you're tying kids to chairs, confining them into tight spaces if they're claustrophobic, things like that. And then defamation is false statements that can damage a person's reputation or image. And then when we're talking intentional tort, I think also a couple things that need to be mentioned is foreseeability. And foreseeability is a person's ability to predict or anticipate an activity or situation that could be harmful to others. So it's kind of our job as educators and administration to, if we're able to foresee something that could happen, we need to act and make sure that it is made safe for the students and stakeholders. And then an attractive nuisance is basically a dangerous instrument or condition that may be attractive or enticing to a less mature audience. It's something that might be maybe in a gym that a less mature audience might think is fun to play with, when it can actually cause more harm than anything else. Okay, negligent tort includes these four things, which is, first of all, you have a duty to protect. Okay, as a teacher, you have a duty to protect, or you owe students the duty to protect them, and that in with that is in loco parentis, which means in place of parents. So the teacher has that duty to protect the students in place of the parents, to educate them and keep them safe in the school. Breach is a failure to exercise a standard of reasonable care. So a breach of that protection or a breach of that duty by a teacher is not adequately providing care for those students. Proximate cause is basically evidence demonstrating a connection between a teacher's breach of duty and an injury. So when both of those things are in play and can be proved, then you have proximate cause. And then last, you have injury, which is basically what it means is the student sustained actual physical or mental injuries that can be considered negligent. Okay, my first case here, we have Barrett versus the USD 259. In this situation, we had a senior student during football practice. It's first practice of the year. It was 83 degrees out when they first started in the morning. They began practicing. There was no shoulder pads, just helmets, which they were required to do. They were given breaks throughout the practice. They were given water breaks and things like that. Later in the practice, during conditioning drills, the student started feeling ill, and was explaining this to the coaches. The coaches allowed the student to sit out, go get a drink of water, come back. The student was still not feeling well, went to go get another drink of water, came back, and then at the end of practice, the student ended up collapsing, being rushed to the hospital, and died in the hospital the next day. And what ended up happening, the courts concluded that the school was not liable for ordinary negligence, but they did owe a general duty of care to students under their care. So therefore, a determination still needed to be done to determine if the school's actions demonstrated gross or wanton negligence, and this case was remanded for further proceedings. For me, I think some reactive measures would be meeting with the coach, talking with witnesses. I would definitely let the other administration and school board be aware of the situation that had happened. And then I think legal counsel would need to be involved in this situation. And then definitely checking with school practice policies. Are we meeting the state regulations when it comes to practice, and were those practiced appropriately by the coaching staff. Proactively, I think any school policies might need to be amended or added or established to protect future student athletes from the same incident, whether that's based on temperature, based on breaks, based on length of practice, whatever it may be. Some policies probably need to be added or edited. And then also I would require coaching professional development to happen, and that can be through certain certifications for student safety. I know CASHA offers a lot of certifications through National Federal High School Association. For coaches, I believe we're required to have concussion certification, and I know in football they have certain certifications for heat, things like that. And then last, some professional ethics that I think could be established to benefit the situation is definitely to ensure student safety, and everyone needs to understand that is the utmost importance of student safety. And then as an administrator, I think being involved at those practices, especially early on in the year and in the sport, and just being able to review and critique some of the coaching decisions and maybe how they're structuring their practices so that we can provide an opportunity for professional growth for them. My next case is Jackson versus the USD 259, in which case a student in gym class he had asked the teacher if they could use a springboard after one of the gymnastics lessons to dunk a basketball in the gym toward the end of class. It does not say if there was any answer given to the student. However, the student decided to do it anyway, and the student was injured when attempting to use the springboard. What ended up happening, the school was not at fault due to no clearly defined mandatory duty of the employee. The school used ordinary negligence for their defense, which is they failed to take reasonable precautions. So basically the student failed to take reasonable precautions knowing that this could be a dangerous act. The school is relieved of liability due to no gross or wanton negligence. The first thing that came to my mind, however, in this case was attractive nuisance, and I'm not sure if that could be argued against the school for that springboard being an attractive nuisance, especially for, let's say class is over and it's in between periods and the educator went to grab a drink of water or something in the hall, student comes by in the gym and sees that, that springboard might be considered an attractive nuisance. I'm not sure if that can be argued or not. So based on that, my reactive measures would be discussing the event with the teacher and reflecting on the importance of the springboard in the gym or the class or the curriculum that is being taught there, and finding out is that special equipment an attractive nuisance or not. Next, being proactive, I would most likely remove the springboard from the gym, and I would make sure that the curriculum we are teaching in physical education is aligning with state standards or national standards, and then amend any policies regarding school equipment use if necessary, making sure all students and stakeholders understand the rules and regulations when it comes to school equipment, and then reviewing the employee handbook with all employees, making sure we all understand what is acceptable behavior and what is not, and then where we need to step in and when we don't need to. As far as professional ethics go, I would review the competency of the teacher. And that's done through professional evaluations or walkthroughs and things like that. We need to maintain a safe learning environment for the students and then be able to provide effective supervision. So that I think can all be done through professional supervision and making myself visible as the administrator. Next is Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District, where a special education student was sexually assaulted after hours off campus by another student. The court actually awarded the student, I think, $500,000 and found the school district negligent in not being able to adequately supervise the special education student. In this case, there was some procedures put in place by the school that I do not think were practiced very effectively. They had equipment to be able to track student attendance. However, I don't think the communication was done effectively to be able to protect the students. So reactively, I'm going to meet with special education teachers, get to discuss the situation and find out, what happened, when was that student leaving, why were they allowed to leave. I'm going to check with the internal system regarding the absences and see why no one was notified of that absence immediately. And then I need to look at any documented issues regarding both students involved, because there has been, the special education teacher did mention public display of affection before between these two. And then why was the absence not flagged right away, whether by the teacher or the system? And then I need to review our PDA school policies. Being proactive, I would amend any policies regarding PDA and those consequences, making sure everyone understands that, all stakeholders involved. I would define more effective procedure for classroom attendance, so either making it mandatory for all teachers to, log in the system and punch in their classroom attendance at the beginning of every class so everyone knows immediately, and then maybe SPED students need to be accompanied certain places from class to class, or towards the end of the school day to parents or to a school bus. And then I would develop a more effective procedure for exiting school grounds. It seemed like students were just able to leave at their own will. Next, for professional ethics, I would provide proper supervision at all times, establish equitable school policies to ensure student safety, and practice effective communication with all stakeholders. So if we know students are moving from class to class or things like that, and maybe the student needs a little supervision, we need to be able to communicate that with everyone and stay on track with parents as well. Next, we have Barnett versus Caldwell, where a classroom teacher left the room to go to the restroom. She asked another classroom teacher to listen for any disturbances. The classrooms were separated by a folding wall, and once gone from the classroom, two students began to horseplay, which resulted in one of the students landing on the other one, which led to one of the students' death. The teacher returned to the classroom 30 minutes after she had left, and once she noticed the situation, immediately called 911, and the student was pronounced dead at the hospital. The courts actually granted the teacher full immunity based on that her actions were discretionary and did not show malice or intent to injure. This one was a little tough for me just because the principal had explained to his faculty, supervision, eyes on, was mandatory and that they should not be leaving the room. And this teacher obviously did not do that. And so reactively, I would immediately suspend the teacher who left the room. I understand that the courts ruled in favor for her because we could not define supervision. However, I define supervision as a principal to my faculty, and so she would be suspended until further notice. And then we would discuss the event with the witnesses and the other teacher involved who was asked to watch the class. And then I would definitely involve the other administration, the school board, and legal counsel in on the situation, let them know what's going on. And then I would definitely verbalize to all school employees our policies regarding supervision and what is expected of them. Being proactive, I would amend any language in the school policies that might be confusing or that some teachers or employees may not be able to comprehend. I would then include rules regarding teachers leaving classroom, which could be, you can't leave unless you have someone coming in there to watch an adult, certified adult to come in there to watch the kids. They cannot be left unsupervised. And then I would probably push to provide first aid training to all staff members and make sure everyone is first aid CPR certified. And also to the appropriate students, make sure that, some students, if it's, 5th, 6th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade for that matter, making sure that they are capable of recognizing emergency situation and getting the help that is needed. And then last, professional ethics. Obviously, we have to ensure a safe learning environment through supervision. And then I would review the competency of the teacher, making sure that she is capable of doing her job and understands our rules. And then adequately explain classroom procedures. Students need to be frequently reminded about classroom procedures, and I guess so does the faculty in this situation. So making sure that everyone's on board with what is expected from the school district.